In the previous lesson, we created two routes for to-dos. Now, let's add code for adding a to-do by accepting the data from the user. Before doing that, let's first clear out all the already added to-dos from the database. Whenever we send data while calling the API, we can access that data from the request.body property. So I will create a variable with name body to store that data. For now, I will just log that data to the console. And I will send success API status using response.send method. This add to do, we're already exporting and we're using it in to-do routes file for the post request. So whenever we send post API request for /API/todos, we will get that sent data logged in the console. Let me clear the console and start the app again. Now, to send that post request, we cannot do it from browser because when we access anything in the browser, GET request is sent by default. So to send the post request, we can use Postman tool. If you don't have Postman, you can download it from the official website. Once the Postman is opened, you can click on the Collections menu. And then click on the plus icon to create new collection. I will name this collection as To-Dos API. And under this collection, I will add a new request to create a new to-do. I will rename this request to create to-do. For the URL, I will enter localhost :3030/todos. Oh, it should be /API/todos instead of just todos. And from here, I will select post as the request method. And to send the data in the post request, we need to click on the body tab, then click on the raw radio button, and from the drop-down select JSON option. Now, we can provide values for the title and the status properties in a JSON object. But as status is optional, this time I will not provide any status. Also, you need to make sure the keys and values you're passing are having double quotes. Without them, you will get an error. Now, if I send this request, you can see we're getting 200 OK status code, which means request is successful. But in the console, we're not seeing the pass data. In the controller, we're logging that pass data to the console, but we're getting it as undefined. This is because we're passing the data in JSON format, so we need to add some code to parse that JSON data. So in index.js file, we can add a middleware using app.use method, and we will pass Express.json method as a parameter. So all the routes defined after this line of code will be receiving the data in JSON format. And now if I send the request again, we should see that pass data in the console. As you can see, it's correctly getting displayed. Now we can create an instance of to-do to add the details into the database. Const to-do equal to new to-do, and we will pass that request.body object as a parameter. And this to-do we need to save by calling the save method. And we can attach .then and .catch handlers. And now, let's send the request again. As you can see, the to-do is created successfully. And status is by default not started because we have not provided it while sending the request. Now, to make the code cleaner, let's use async await instead of .then and .catch. So I will mark this function as async. And here, I will store the result of the find method in result variable by adding await keyword. Now, I can remove the dot then and dot catch method. And we can use response.sendResult. Instead of result, we can call it todos to make it more specific. And whenever we use a wait keyword, we always need to wrap that code in try-catch block to handle promise rejection. Now, let's add another request in Postman so we can test it. URL will be the same, but instead of post, it will be getRequest. As you can see, we're correctly getting the todos. Now, let's say in the try block, I have mistyped to-do model name, and let's send the request again. As you can see, we're not getting any response back because we have added catch block to handle the error, but in catch block we're not sending back anything if there is any error. So, let's log the error to the console first. And if I send the request again, you will see that error message in the console. So in case of error also, we need to call response.send method so the request will be successful and will not be in pending state. But just calling send method will return 200 OK status code by default, which we don't want in case of error. So before calling send method, we can call status method and pass the status code as a parameter to it. As this is a server-side error, we will pass 500 status code. Now let's send the request again. As you can see, we're getting 500 internal server error as the response status code. So always make sure to send correct status code while sending response for each API call. You can go to HTTP Status's website to see all the available status codes and their meaning. So for success, by default it's 200 status code. Whenever we create a new resource, we need to send 201 status. Starting with 400 specifies client-side error, and starting with 500 specifies server-side error. Now, let's change the add to-do function to async await. So, I will add try-catch block, and I will make this function async. I will move the code inside try block. Now I can remove .then and .catch. And as save method returns a promise, I will add a wait before calling that. Let me type the to-do name correctly so we will not get any error. Now, we can send back the save to-do using response.send method. And because add to-do is a post request used to create a new to-do, we need to send back 201 status code to indicate creation of a resource. And in case of error, I can send back status of 500. Now, if I send the get todos request, it works without any issue. Now let's verify the create to-do request. I will change the title to another to-do. And I will also add status of completed. Now, if I send the request, you can see that the to-do is correctly created with the provided title and status. Now, I can go back to get to-dos and send the request again. You can see that the newly added to-do is getting displayed correctly. So that's how you can add and get data from the MongoDB database. So for getting the data from MongoDB, we use the find method on the to-do model by sending empty object to get list of all the available data in that to-do collection. Now, let's say we want to get all the to-dos with matching title of another to-do. So to get that result, I can provide the title of another to-do while calling the find method. Now, this find method will return all the to-dos that has a title of another to-do. If I send the request again, you can see I'm getting an array of matching documents. So find method always returns an array containing the matching documents. There is also find one method that you can use if you don't want an array to be returned. Find one method always returns a single document, which is the first matching document. So, if I send the request again, you can see we get only single matching document. So depending on requirement, you can use either find or find one method. In our case, we want to find out all the to-dos, so we're using find method. You can use any of the field to find the required data. So let's say I want to use the _ID field to find the element, I can do that also. If I send the request again, you can see, we get an array with the matching document. I will revert the code back to empty object to get all to-dos. So just to recap, we use to-do.find method to get all to-dos. And to insert new to-do, we create object of to-do model and pass the data as a parameter to the constructor function. And to save the data in the database, we just call the save method on the to-do object instance. And as we are using await, the line 17 will only execute if there is no error while executing the save method. If there is any error while executing save method, catch handler will be executed, and we will send back error status code. Also, don't forget to call response.send method even if there is success or error. If you don't call response.send method, the client will never get any response back and the request will remain in pending state as you can see here. So never forget to call response.send method even if it's success or an error. Now, we can remove this commented out code. One more code improvement we can make here is that we have hard-coded the port number right now. But when you deploy your application on the internet, you will get a dynamic port value for your application that you can access using process.env.uppercase port variable. And now instead of 3030, we can use this port variable. And as we're running the application locally, we don't have this port environment variable, so we will add a fallback value of 3030. So if there is no environment variable with name port, then 3030 will be used as the default port. But now, if I change the port to 3000, you will see server started message on port 3030, which is not correct. So to fix this, we can use template literal syntax while displaying the console message. So now, no matter on which port the application is started, you will correctly see that port in the console message. So that's it about this video. If you found this video useful, do like it and subscribe to the channel to get upcoming video notifications.